All right, and that is where we begin. A developing story this morning. As of midnight last night, Jonathan Kuminga is eligible to be traded. And our Shams is here, Anthony Slater is here. They're reporting that he has demanded a trade away from the Warriors. The NBA trade deadline, February 5th, a whisper away. So Shams, Anthony, joining me now. The Warriors have 3 weeks to do something. Shams, how did they get here and what comes next?
MJ, the Jonathan Kuminga Golden State Warriors relationship is fractured. It is non-existent, specifically the relationship between Steve Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga. It's been described to me as fractured beyond repair, completely deteriorated. And everyone in that Warriors building knows that Jonathan Kuminga wants out. He's been wanting a trade out of Golden State, and tensions have only risen over the last several weeks when he's basically been banished. He's the fourth highest paid player on the Warriors, but he has not been in the rotation. So the Warriors have been canvassing the trade market for Jonathan Kuminga. Two teams that have stood out with interest, mutual interest. Jonathan Kuminga has interest in them. They have interest in Jonathan Kuminga, are the Sacramento Kings and the Dallas Mavericks. He's got a unique contract structure, a team option next season that allows him to be a little bit more trade eligible and really a viable option on the marketplace. So whether you and the Warriors believe Jonathan Kuminga is a star or not, he wants to get a trade elsewhere to see whether he is the all-star that he believes in himself.
Anthony, how are the Warriors viewing the situation?
I had one source basically describe the current situation as a, quote, complete waste of everybody's time. And I think the term everybody matters there because obviously you have a player who has these, ambitious career desires and at this point feels a little held hostage by the organization. You have a Hall of Fame coach who's made it very clear he doesn't think Kuminga fits with what they're trying to do to win now. And, Steve Kerr's very empowered at this moment, later in his career, coaching career, later in this core to make those decisions. And then you have a group of veterans who are, number one, they're pretty fond of Jonathan Kuminga, and they don't love seeing him in this limbo. And also, Jonathan Kuminga's making $22.5 million. He's rotting on the bench at this point, and they're trying to win a championship this season. Jimmy Butler said they're playing mediocre basketball recently. Well, that $22.5 million could be used in the trade market to get somebody who could help. And I think some of the reason you're feeling some of this angst building is because the Warriors are at least signaling to people that they don't have to trade Kuminga if they don't like the offers. And there are a lot of people on the ground level being like, this situation needs to get resolved by February 6th.
Anthony, there's always a tipping point. So where was it? Where did the relationship go bad here?
How long do we have? This is 5 years of a story, but I'll sum up what's happened recently quick. I mean, you have the contentious negotiations over the summer. Me and Shams are on here, basically every week, relaying the latest, issues between the two sides. He comes back feeling a type of way about the contract he feels he was forced into by the Warriors, this team structure or team-friendly structure to be traded. He thought he had, chances elsewhere where he would have got the starting job and opportunity he wanted. He starts to begin the season. It seemed like it was going well, but that was always on a rotten foundation where the moment it went wrong, Steve Kerr went away from Jonathan Kuminga. The moment Steve Kerr went away from Jonathan Kuminga, it was reopening old wounds where he said, Steve Kerr's never believed in me, and it kind of devolved from there. And I think the biggest picture takeaway I can say with my conversations with the Kuminga side is they feel like this is a 5-year tug of war where he is a pawn, and it is about the misalignment between ownership and a coach where Steve Kerr doesn't believe in Kuminga necessarily as a player that fits with his core, but ownership at various times has been unwilling to trade him, and we're in the 5th year of this basic hostage situation, and Jonathan Kuminga wants out at this point.
Yeah, a lot of layers there, but one thing clear, there's a riff. All right, Anthony, thank you so much. Kuminga has missed 23 games this season, but the Warriors boast a 13-10 record in those games compared to a 9-9 record with games with Kuminga. Perk, how did the Warriors get to this point?
Can we address the elephant in the room? And look, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about this dysfunctional organization. Real talk. When you talk about the Golden State Warriors, yes, we're talking about a team that was a dynasty at a period of time. But since Bob Myers has left that organization, it has been nothing but dysfunctional. When you talk about the breakup with Klay Thompson, you talk about this relationship between Steve Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga. I'm starting to question their player development, and they're doing a disservice to the most important player in that organization, in the history of that organization, is Steph Curry, who, by the way, is averaging 28 points this season. Damn it, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? Out of all the teams that are trying to go compete for a title, they're not only set up for the now, but they're set up for the future. The Golden State Warriors don't have a real future outside of Stephen Curry. So they have to get this right. Right when it comes down to getting back the right piece for Jonathan Kuminga, it's just very embarrassing and it's a big disappointment when it comes down to talking about this situation with the Golden State Warriors.
What are we doing here? What are we doing here leading off the signature show of the NBA, talking about a player who hasn't played for a month, who's having the worst shooting season of his career, playing for a team that self-described as mediocre. Jimmy Butler called the team mediocre the other day, and he wasn't wrong. Steve Kerr recently called the team a fading dynasty, and he wasn't wrong. What are we doing here? If he had had an offer last summer from another team, he would have signed an offer sheet. He didn't have an offer sheet. A pox on both of their houses. I've had enough of this. This is not a significant thing. Just move on. I can't take it anymore. We've seen Anthony Slater go through 4 seasons in his backyard talking about this story, about a guy who is not a significant. Shams and Slater reported 2 weeks ago he had a chance to play, and he said, I got a back injury.
I'm going to be Mr. Positivity to this
doing?
situation here. We got all the anchors here. I do think, how do we find a resolution? I think that's the end goal here.
Please.
We have 3 weeks to do that here with Kuminga's contract, which is right around $22.5 million here. They certainly need front court help, right? And how do you go out and do it? But how do you do that and align with the Curry, Butler, and Green timeline, 3 players that have 1 year under contract? And here's the question that we don't know. What happens if Jonathan Kuminga's on this roster at 3:01 on February 5th Eastern time? What happens then? That's the unknown of everything here.
The Warriors face the Knicks tonight. They're in the midst of a rough West Coast road trip, playing in Sacramento last night. And yes, that does mean it was Mike Brown's return to Sac, now as the head coach of the Knicks. We go to the first quarter. Jalen Brunson has the ball up top, but great play here for Precious, not so much for Brunson. We're going to watch him go coast to coast for this layup. But the after effects here with the ankle tweak for Brunson, guys, rough to watch.
Almost a year ago when he sprained that in L.A. against the Lakers.
Exactly. He did go to the locker room, did not return. A few minutes later, DeMar DeRozan with a little spin move for a mid-range jumper, taking the lead for his team there. Second quarter, Karl-Anthony Towns, my Dominican brethren, not his finest hour.
Where is he?
Exactly.
Where is he?
Precisely. All the way back there. We don't love that. Disastrous effort there by Towns. Yeah, leaves Russell Westbrook wide open there for a corner 3. Final seconds of the second. DeRozan to Zach LaVine, who drains the 3. Sacramento raining down 3s against New York. Third quarter, Westbrook to Precious. Yeah, the Kings light the beam as they go on to win 112-101. Here's Mike Brown after the loss.
This is one of the worst, if not the worst, that I've seen us play the entire year in terms of following a game plan and keeping the game simple. I got to give the Kings credit because they took it to us, and we didn't respond in any way, shape, or form. But even before Jalen got hurt, we weren't following the game plan, and I'm not sure why, but we just kind of were out there, just going through the motions. If you go through the motions in this league, it doesn't matter. You're gonna get your behind kicked, and we got our behind kicked.
Yeah, they might get a pass, for losing without their star guard, but that doesn't explain the recent stretch. Since winning the NBA Cup, the Knicks have a losing record and the second worst defense in the NBA, ahead of only the Jazz. They've allowed 110 points in 16 straight games for the first time since the 1960s. Perk, questions, comments, concerns, personal crises as it compares to the Knicks?
I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned. And y'all know I'm a big body Brunson fan to the max. But the most important player on that squad, if they're trying to get to the NBA Finals or even thinking about winning the NBA championship, is Karl-Anthony Towns. And there's too many times throughout the course of this season that I'm watching the Knicks play, and he doesn't seem engaged on both ends of the floor. Now, we see this right here, right? Like, just it's the dumb fouls. Like, we've been talking about that for the last 2 years. They're going to start him at center. If your center is not going to anchor your defense and play with the type of force and tenacity, then they're not going to have a shot. Yes, they're going to get through the regular season. They may win the first round. They may win the second round. But when you talk about possibly meeting up with those two lines over there in Detroit, I'm talking about Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart. Man, Karl-Anthony Towns, you got to be ready to get your feet hot in the trenches.
Yeah, their defense obviously is struggling right now, but I'm more worried about their offense. The Knicks are designed to be an elite offensive team. They were the #3 offense in the league from the start of the year through Christmas. The reason they haven't been able to sustain a bad defensive stretch here is their offense has collapsed. 112 points last night, that's not ideal, but you should survive that if you're an elite offense like the Knicks. They need to get their offense back, and now I'm worried that Brunson might miss some time.
I think big picture, they're going to be judged what happens in the playoffs. Them in Cleveland, what happens in May or June here. I think short term, I think it is concerning. I think these guys let their coach down last night. I mean, here's a coach who was fired by Sacramento, and you go in there and you're non-competitive. Even when Jalen Brunson was out there, and then you get, I know Sacramento's played better of late, but you're in a non-competitive game against a Sacramento team that hasn't even hit 10 wins this year.
Yeah, but Bobby, I'm with you, but you got to get to the postseason. Yeah. And you got to get through the process. And again, I'm not trying to pick on Karl-Anthony Towns, but they traded for him last year for them to move the needle, right? And we need the best version of the Knicks is when Karl-Anthony Towns is at his best. Last year, he averaged 24 points. This year, he's averaging 21. It's too many times he's floating around the three-point line, and I get it, Wendy. Me and you always go back and forth with this offense, defense, but the one thing you can agree with me on is that when you talk about teams that win championships or get to the finals, they be top 10 defensively and top 10 offensively.